You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com. All right, and yes, and hello, and welcome to the Mike Riley Now podcast here on the Young Angels of America Network. I am your host, of course, Mr. Mike Riley. Welcome one and all. It is Thursday, May the 4th of 2017. I'm usually joined by my incredible, lovely, beautiful, and talented co-hosts, Charlie Sandy and Cam Robson. But tonight they are studying. They are going to be studying tonight because they have finals tomorrow. So we want to wish them the best of luck with their tests and the best of luck with their studying. And they are definitely here with us in spirit. Of course, I am joined none other than the executive director of Young Angels Network, Miss Brooke Dougherty. She is chilling tonight, holding me down. Hello, Brooke. Hey. So we have a pretty big show tonight. A lot of stuff has been going on in this past week, so it's going to be crazy. So first of all, I got to shout out all of my listeners, everybody who's listening to me from all over the world. I just got a shout out from China right now. That's lovely. Everybody who's listening on Spreaker, anybody who's listening on Stitcher, on iTunes, shout out to my iTunes family. Everybody that's listening live on Spreaker. We are also on iHeartRadio, Google Play, all that cool stuff. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Make sure you log on to MikeRileyNow.com. Follow me on the Facebook, the Twitters, the Instagrams, and log on to YoungAngelsNetwork.org and do your thing there. All right, y'all. Let's jump into it. First of all, I got to say happy Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. I am not a Star Wars fan, but I just see it everywhere I go today. So it is also the day before Cinco de Mayo. So anybody who is in support of Donald Trump building that wall across that border, I do not want to see you celebrating tomorrow. Also, today's National Prayer Day. And we can use a couple of prayers today after a lot of the things that took place. But before I get into it, I gotta say, first of all, I gotta open up with some kind of like some apologies or some my bads, right? So last week, Charlie's not here for me to pat her on the back, but last week Charlie brought up that Jimmy Carter was the governor of Georgia, and I said I think he was the governor of Indiana, and somebody fact checked me on that, and actually he was the governor of Georgia. So Charlie, you were right about that. Yes, so we're gonna give you a round of applause. I apologize, I was wrong. You were right. Charlie also had a little bit of foreshadowing because she also mentioned that Trump had this like tie to Andrew Jackson. And she kept talking about how him and Andrew Jackson were kind of neck and neck and how Trump really looks up to Andrew Jackson. And sure enough, Trump made one of the most silliest remarks I've ever heard when he said that if Andrew Jackson had been alive, there would have been no Civil War. He wouldn't have put up with it. He would have done something about that. And that's just a ridiculous statement, so we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the second segment. But I just thought that was some awesome foreshadowing, and it was pretty cool. Also, last week, I criticized President Barack Obama pretty harshly for doing a speech for the banks and taking a $400,000 purse for it. I was kind of, I was like, that's not too good. That's not a good look for the movement and for the resistance and for what we're doing and what we stand for. I want to publicly take that back. Barack Obama, go out there and make your money, do your thing. I'll tell you why. The reason why is because Jason Chaffetz or whatever his name is. This is the man. He's a congressman. I can't remember where he's from. I want to say Ohio, but he has spent his entire congressional career trying to take down Hillary Clinton. Like, he's the one besides him, like besides Darrell Issa, this guy was like top Hillary hunter. I mean, he was the one leading all the investigations. He was the one that's swearing up and down she should go to jail, blah, 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 blah. And then, like, I think this guy was born to try to take Hillary Clinton down. Like, he was, like, that was his destiny. Like, an angel talked to him in a cave a long time ago or something and said, you were going to take Hillary Clinton down. And I think that's what he wanted to do. And then sure enough, sure enough, once Hillary Clinton was out of the picture, he announced that he was going to retire from Congress. I think I have nothing else better to do. He found something else to do. Once he found out that Barack Obama was receiving this $400,000 purse for giving these speeches at whatever else the case may be, he said that there should be some sort of bill brought up to take away his pension. Now, if you work for the federal government and you retire with the federal government, usually you get a pension, especially if you're the president. You know, you get a lifelong pension. You get lifelong Secret Service protection as well, which is pretty cool. Those are the perks. But yeah, this guy is trying to launch some sort of a bill or some sort of congressional movement to try to take away the former president's pension based upon the fact that he got paid that much from a speech. Jeezy peaks. Well, I mean, will they stop at nothing? And before we get too deep into all that other stuff, I do want to talk about because I want to talk about what the main topic on the show tonight was supposed to be about this budget that was passed earlier this week. And we're going to get into that in a second. But before I get into that, I have to address the elephant that's in the room, and that would be with healthcare. Today, the House Republicans finally got what they wanted, and they finally got a repeal, and I guess you can call it a replacement for the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, and it passed the House. Now it has to go to the Senate to go for a vote, and if it passes the Senate, it ends up on the president's desk, and if it ends up on the president's desk, he signs it and it goes into law. So it hasn't gone into law just yet, but the House are swearing to God that it did. They spiked the football at the 50-yard line. That's pretty much what they did. They were like, yeah, we won. They're doing their victory dance in the first quarter because this isn't over yet. And it's funny, after they did that, this is something they've been trying to do forever. After they did that, they literally Donald Trump had a bus pick up all the House Republicans, and they drove to the White House, and they were popping Cristal and dancing and doing all that other stuff. Like, they just won a huge victory. They were so proud of that. So that is not implemented yet. Oh, I forgot to mention in the beginning of the show, by the way, we're gonna have a special guest on tonight, Nick Melvoin. He is running for LA School Board here in Los Angeles County, especially here on the west side. He'll be on the third segment of the show. I did forget to mention that. My bad, Nick. It's gonna be a pretty cool thing. He's actually blowing up out here. So just a little side note. But anyway, back to the healthcare law. So now, what does this mean? What is the replacement for Obamacare? And what is the new healthcare law? What does it mean? What's going to happen? What's going to change? Basically, what the administration did was they took the healthcare law that we have, the Affordable Care Act, which was basically subsidizing so people who have trouble paying for their health insurance can get health insurance. Right? There was a Medicare expansion. There was a Medicaid expansion. There were, they tried to give it to the states, but a lot of the Republican governors of those states refused to take a lot of the expansion money. And then Ted Cruz went and did the risk corridor thing, or blew it up. And then that sure enough raised the premiums on everything. So what the Republicans wanted to do, or what the right wanted to do, was they wanted to really repeal this, but they didn't know what they were going to repeal it with, because people were starting to like Obamacare. And this is the truth. I know if you listen to Fox News and you listen to all the other, right-wing hate radio, you'll hear them say that Obamacare is failing. Nobody likes it. People want to get rid of it. That is not true. That is not true. President Obama mentioned the other day that Obamacare is more popular than Trump is. And it is true. It is more popular than Trump is. But the Republicans control both the House and the Senate, so it's easier for them to overturn it. Now, what does this mean? It's not law yet, but if it becomes law, what does this mean? Well, the first thing they wanted to do was get rid of the individual mandates. So that means that you're not going to be required by law to have health care anymore, right? Cool, whatever. What else does it mean? It also means that if you have a more high risk of a health problem, you're going to have to pay more, right? That's pretty much, and they left it up to the states. So they kicked it back to the states. They said, okay, we want the states to decide how they're going to do their own healthcare thing. Now, they try to keep in this pre-existing condition clause, right? But they weren't able to really keep it in because they kicked it back to the states. So the states can actually put up a waiver of some sort, so that way they don't have to take people with pre-existing conditions. Now, the law says that if you don't want to take people with pre-existing conditions, that you have to put them in a risk pool. And within that risk pool, the federal government's going to spread about $8 billion to help people get health care, which is not enough. They're going to kick people off Medicare. They're going to kick people off Medicaid. And also, the biggest thing it means, the biggest chunk of this is it gives a huge tax break to people who make a lot of money. Trickle down economics once again. Back into play. This is what's happening. I don't know if y'all got a chance to see Jimmy Kimmel this week. This is kind of old news, but earlier this week, before this went to the floor for a vote, Jimmy Kimmel gave the story of his son. And he was saying how his son was born with a heart murmur and how, he would need care. And it was expensive care, by the way. And Jimmy Kimmel brought up a pretty good point. Basically the sum, it was a pretty emotional, draining speech, but basically the sum of his speech was, I can afford this. I'm rich. I got money, blah, blah, blah. But what about the people who can't? I'll play you a little clip of it, actually. I got one queued up. Hold on real quick. I'll play this. Hold on.
Really sad to me. We were brought up to believe that we live in the greatest country in the world. But until a few years ago, millions and millions of us had no access to health insurance at all. Before 2014, if you were born with congenital heart disease like my son was, there was a good chance you'd never be able to get health insurance because you had a pre-existing condition. You were born with a pre-existing condition. If your parents didn't have medical insurance, you might not live long enough to even get denied because of a pre-existing condition. If your baby is going to die, and it doesn't have to, it shouldn't matter how much money you make. I think that's something that, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or something else, we all agree on that, right? I mean, we do.
So basically, in a nutshell, Jimmy Kimmel brought up a very, very good point there. It shouldn't matter how much money you make. This is the thing I don't understand about people who are cheering on, not repealing the Affordable Care Act and not moving towards a more universal healthcare system. Donald Trump, in his ever-wondering mind of stupidity, was talking to the Prime Minister of Australia today, and he told the Prime Minister of Australia in front of hundreds of people, millions of people, because people are watching it. He said Australia has a better healthcare system than we do. Australia has publicly funded universal healthcare. What we've been fighting for. They have private insurance companies, but they work with the government, and the private insurance companies are not allowed to use it for profit. It's against the law. Now, why should it be okay to make a profit off of people's health? That doesn't make any sense. But as long as we can give a tax break and a tax cut to the billionaires and allow the insurance companies to make as much money as they possibly can get, it should, it doesn't, who cares? That's like our schools being funded this way, right? And it's cool because we're going to talk to Nick a little bit later about this, but can you imagine if our school system was set up this way? And they said, well, the dumber kids or the kids who have a problem learning, they have to pay more. Their parents have to pay more. But the kids who get things pretty easily and who have pretty good mind, they have to pay less. And we're going to leave it up to the states and see how they want to do it. And then if you have a pre-existing condition where you can't learn or something like that, then we can deny you getting into school. That's pretty much what's going on right now. And that's what's going to happen again. Not to mention a lot of the Republicans who signed this bill today, I swear to God, you can look this up, go ahead and Google search it, did not read the bill. They didn't read it. All they know is they wanted to repeal and replace Obamacare. They can care less about all the specifics. They don't care about the specifics. This is dangerous. We're floating into a weird territory here, But we'll see what happens. It's not law yet. I didn't get as deep into it as I want to, and it's funny because I didn't even get to the budget. But maybe we'll cover that in our next segment a little bit. But I'm going to learn more about this, and I'm going to teach you guys, and including teach myself at the same time about this, what's going on with healthcare. Healthcare, I've said it before, and I'll say it again on this program. It does not have to be so complicated. What is so complicated about if you're sick or if you're hurt, you should be able to go get help? If you have the right to life, you have the right to live. It shouldn't matter how much money you have. That's inequality. It's inequality by a different name. It's income inequality, but it's inequality. This isn't buying blue jeans or buying iPhones or luxurious goods, that consumer goods. Health is not a consumer good. All right, y'all. Take a quick break. We'll be right back on the other side. Mike Riley Now podcast, Young Angels of America Network.
You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com.
All right, y'all. Welcome back to the Mike Riley Now podcast here on the Young Angels Network. Please make sure you log on to YoungAngelsNetwork.org. Like I said, we have Nick Melvoin coming up here in the third segment of the show, so he should be on in just a second, or just a few minutes. So y'all stay tuned for that. It's going to be a pretty cool conversation we're having with him. Like I said, he's running for school board of Los Angeles County. And for those of you who live in LA County, by the way, we do have an election on Tuesday. There's really only one measure on the ballot, which is Measure C. And this has to do with civilian reviews of police misconduct. Now, I don't know the specifics of this law, so I can't give you a yay or nay on it. I would highly suggest that you do the research. But if you do live on the west side of things, you'll also get a chance to vote for Nick Melvoin, who is running against, what's the kid's name he's running against? Steve Zimmer, right? Steve Zimmer. So you'll get the opportunity to do that as well. So you'll get to hear, like I said on this show, we really like to have the candidates who are running kind of speak their position. So this should be pretty interesting. Okay, I usually do news of the week, but I don't have my team here. I'll try to get into a little bit of news. One of the big news stories I think I really want to talk about is there was this young lady who was sitting in on Jeff Sessions' I think it was his congressional hearing, and I forget which congressperson it was, but he had said something along the lines of Jeff Sessions has always done things in the best interest of people, something that wasn't true. And the young lady chuckled. She was like, ha, 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 ha. She laughed at it because it was the guy was full of shit. And she got escorted out of the Capitol building, and now she's facing, she got in trouble for obstruction, or for there's some sort of law that says that you can't picket inside the Capitol building, you can't protest inside the Capitol building. So now she's facing a year in jail. If you laugh at Jeff Sessions, you might get a year in jail. Just keep that in mind. I'm going to post that one on MikeRileyNow.com, of course. I've been doing better about posting my stories on MikeRileyNow.com, so I'm going to go ahead and give myself a pat on the back. I deserve it. And yeah, I'm going to put that one on there, so y'all check it out. Pretty interesting stuff, but that's one of the bigger stories I wanted to get into this week. And something else I wanted to get into too was we're not going to get a chance to talk much economics, but one of the going kind of myths around lowering the corporate tax rate. We talked about this last week about lowering taxes and trickle down economics and top down economic theories, is because we pay the highest tax rate in the world, according to, this is something that Donald Trump was pumping through the entire 2016 election. We pay the highest tax rate in the world. We pay the highest tax rate in the world. We pay the highest corporate tax rate in the world. I'm going to post up the corporate tax rates around the world. That is not true either. Although we do have the third highest, which is 35%, which most people don't pay anyway, which most corporations don't pay anyway. I think the lowest one was like 32%. So everybody's paying around the same. And then if you go to like the United Arab Emirates, they're paying like 50%. And Dubai is doing very nice. All right, let's get into this next segment here. So earlier in the show, I mentioned how Donald Trump, love saying the guy's name. He made a statement this week about something along the lines of, and I'm doing this from memory, so forgive me if I get some of this wrong. But he said something along the lines of, Andrew Jackson had a really big heart, and if he were alive during the time of the Civil War probably wouldn't have happened. He would have averted that because he saw it coming and he hated it, and he would have done something about it, right? Now, normally when it comes to Donald Trump's, the things he says and kind of the dumb shit he talks about and whatever, I really don't get that into it because I'm not interested in that shit. I'm not really about that. Like, I'm not about talking about what he talks about. I like issues. I like policy. I like things that actually matter. What Donald Trump says, 9 times out of 10 ain't got nothing to do with nothing. Just like if God forbid, but if a politician commits infidelity, we shouldn't kick him out of office because it has nothing to do with their ability to govern. Right. But this one kind of struck a chord with me a little bit. The reason why is because Andrew Jackson, when he said Andrew Jackson had a big heart, Andrew Jackson, as Charlie mentioned on this show just last week, signed the Indio Removal Act. He was the one that made all of those Cherokee people that lived down there in Georgia and Tennessee, he made them march all the way west on the Trail of Tears and didn't care. That's after the Supreme Court told him it was unconstitutional, that's having a big heart. On top of that, he would have averted the Civil War. How? He was a slave owner. He was a notoriously big slave owner. He owned like 150 plus slaves. What would he have done to avert the Civil War? Allow the South. First of all, the South wouldn't have seceded anyway, because they seceded because Abraham Lincoln became president, and he didn't even want to free the slaves. So that's a bunch of bullshit. So, but the real reason why that really struck a chord with me is because when people hear the right use talking points like that, it really does a lot to damage the history of what really took place, of what's really real. And because of that, people have a tendency to they can't focus on the problem, right? Such as, Andrew Jackson was a slave owner. So are you undermining slavery? Are you undermining the impact of it? And the reason I bring that up is because, this past Saturday was the 25th anniversary of the Los Angeles riots that took place out here in 1992. I was about 6 years old when it happened. I lived in Orange County, so I didn't actually witness it. I remember watching it on TV. I remember watching Reginald Denny get hit by that brick. I do remember watching that. I remember after the riots, my dad drove me up through South Central, and we drove through Watts and South Central. And I remember seeing all the buildings that burned down and things like that. It was pretty surreal. But the reason I bring that up is because the LA riots had a lot to do with police brutality. But, the way the police were acting in the neighborhoods and how it really impacted the people of color that they were mistreating. This past week, there was a little 15-year-old boy in Texas. His name, I think his name is Jordan. Yeah, Jordan. I'm sorry. I should have probably had his name pulled up here when I got it. But he was a little 15-year-old boy in Texas, right? Jordan Edwards. That's right. Thank you. It was Jordan Edwards. Jordan Edwards was at a high school party, and he was partying with some people like we all did back in high school. And somebody called the cops because they were making too much noise or whatever else the case may be, right? So the cops come, blah, blah, blah. Jordan gets in his car, right? Starts to drive away, and the police shot him and killed him. Okay, little black kid, 15 years old. Right? At the beginning of their story, they said that Jordan was using that car as a weapon, and it was driving towards them. When in reality, when further reviewed, it turned out that he was driving away from them. Same, this type of shit with this misconduct on the side of the police, the side of law enforcement towards people of color, is just it's still really I can't believe it's still a thing. The culture of policing in this country is so geared towards it. It might come from, if you've seen that documentary 13 where they talk about slave patrols and things like that, it may actually come from that. Also, too, this week, there was that brother down in I think it was South Carolina, who got shot in his back when he was running away. And they called it a mistrial on the police officer. He finally pled guilty this week. Jeff Sessions isn't using the Department of Justice to investigate police misconduct anymore. That brother that got killed in South Carolina, or not South Carolina, when he was laying on the ground, God, I should get my name straight. It was in Louisiana. Excuse me. Like I said, I'm doing a lot of this from memory. His name was Alton Sterling. Yes, I do remember his name. God bless me. God bless Alton Sterling as well. But I mean, I've seen this tape where this dude's laying on the ground. The cops have their knee in his back and on his neck. He's on the ground. He doesn't have a gun. He's unarmed, and he gets shot. He gets killed, and the police get away with it. What has changed since the Los Angeles riots? What has happened in the time in between? Now things are just different, because instead of having a video camera on where we're flashing to Rodney King getting beat up left and right, now everybody can just use their phone and just turn everything on. It's a nerve-wracking experience within itself. All right, y'all. We're going to be back on the other side of the break with Nick Melvoin. So y'all stay tuned. This is the Mike Rally Now podcast here on the Young Angels of America Network. Yeah.
You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com.
Yes, y'all, and welcome back to the Mike Riley Now podcast here on the Young Angels Network. Make sure you log on to YoungAngelsNetwork.org. Log on to MikeRileyNow.com. Make sure you follow me on the Facebook, the Twitters, the Instagrams, YouTube, all that cool stuff. Also, remember, I will be in Sacramento May 19th through the 21st. If you happen to live anywhere in Northern California, or if you're going to be going to the California Democratic Convention, hit me up online. I will be there, and we're gonna be out there partying and doing all that cool stuff. So I just got a text message from Nick's campaign manager. He said he's going to be running a little bit late. No big deal. They are busy people out there. So once again, there is an election, Los Angeles County Indians. I think that's what we call ourselves. There is an election coming up on this Tuesday, I believe. Let me see. Is it this coming Tuesday? It's the 16th. Okay, my bad. No, you're right. It is on the 16th. It's not this Tuesday. It's the following Tuesday. So on May 16th, Los Angeles County, we do have an election. It's not, first of all, every election is a big deal. There's no such thing as an election that's not a big deal. Elections have consequences. We all know that. At least I hope we all know that by now. I hope y'all been listening to the show and you got at least that much from it. But this election, it doesn't have a lot of measures. It doesn't have a lot going on with it. And a lot of people didn't even know about it. So, but that is the point of what we're doing this show for. So, Los Angeles County, please remember that we do have an election coming up on the 16th. If you need more information, you can hit me up. Hit me up on Facebook, or you can get at me on MikeRileyNow.com. Or you can just shoot me an email. I'll shoot you some information about the election on May 16th so we can all get down with it. So while we're waiting for Nick to call in, I do kind of want to go over something really quick. So earlier this week, the United States Congress finally passed what's called our budget. We had a budget resolution. So what happens basically is, all the money that the government makes over the year, let's say, however we collect money, and I explained this on this show before, we use it to figure out what we're going to do to fund the federal government, right? So we have like $1 trillion. You got $1 trillion to spend. What you going to spend it on? Now, the House of Representatives has to agree on what they're going to spend their money on before we can do it. Otherwise, if they don't, the government gets shut down. And when the government gets shut down, that means that the federal part of the government isn't going to be funded, which means that, people who work for the federal government aren't going to get paid. National monuments and parks and things like that are going to be closed, and, yada, 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 yada. So in order to pass the budget, they have to agree. The Republicans and Democrats have to agree on what they're going to pass the budget on. Now, I shit you not, ladies and gentlemen. This is why the two parties are not the same. I know I hear people out there all the time, all my Jill Stein people, the Susan Sarandon, oh God, I can't, she's on my slap list, but Susan Sarandon, people like that who are going around the entire election preaching all this Hillary and Trump are the same, the two parties are the same, a vote for one is a vote for the other one. Man, if you look at the way the budget is broken down, you will find that that is so not true. So not true. Right? The things that the Republicans want to put our tax dollars towards almost has nothing to do with the people. It has a lot to do with the military. You know, we like taking a lot of our money and I don't mean military as in feeding our men and women in uniform and clothing them and giving them health care and giving them pensions when they come back home and making sure they get, you know, we provide them with a GI, they get education. But, well, anyway, here's Nick right here. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and click him in and see if we get him. Hold on. All right. Hello.
Hey, Mike.
My man, Nick. What is going on? Nick Melvoin. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm sorry I'm a few minutes late.
Ah, man, it's no big deal. It is. You are a busy man. You are a busy man. All right. Well, welcome to the Mike Riley Now podcast. You are actually live. We're actually live on the air. So welcome to the show.
Great.
Yeah,
well, hi,
I know.
everyone.
Hey, what's going on? Ladies and gentlemen, Nick Melvoin. All right. We had to give you the proper introduction. So
no, I hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was explaining to all my listeners in the beginning of the show that we do have an election coming up on May 16th, and Nick is running for the Los Angeles County Schoolboard. So this is going to be a good opportunity for everybody to kind of take a listen in and kind of get an idea. You can tweet him at Nick Melvoin. That's at NickMelvoin for everybody who wants to take a gander there at that. Now, before we get started, I got to say, Nick, I cannot drive through the West Side without seeing a bumper sticker or lawn sign or like huge poster with your name on it. It is crazy, man. Anybody who lives in West LA, this guy's a rock star. I actually took a picture of a bumper sticker I saw tonight, so got to give you props on that, man.
Thanks, man. That's been the most humbling part, driving through and seeing signs in front of houses. And I'm like, I don't know who lives here, but the momentum and the coalition we've been able to put together is really humbling.
Right, man. That is so awesome. That is awesome. So we're going to jump right into it. So you're running for LA County School Board. Can you kind of explain to the listeners a little bit, basically, what's going to be your function if you do get elected?
Yeah, so most cities of comparable size, like New York and Chicago, D.C., Boston, have mayorally controlled schools. It's a big part of the mayoral campaigns. They appoint a chancellor or a superintendent. LA is the largest district in the country by far to have an elected school board. And actually the only district that's larger than us at all is New York. And so 7 people govern a school district of 660,000 kids, of $8 billion annual budget, which is larger than the city of LA itself, the 720 square mile area. And it's governed by 7 people. So you do everything from hiring and firing key personnel to setting that budget to approving and overseeing charter schools. There are more charter schools in LA than anywhere in the country. And it's, you're kind of, you're the steward of that school district.
Wow. Okay, cool. So that's a pretty big job, seeing as like, education is a pretty big deal. So, yeah, man, so kudos for you.
Yeah, we think so. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
and that's why we hope that more people will show up to vote, because it's a job, in some ways it's thankless. It's kind of a full-time job that doesn't pay very well, but in part, very few people vote. And so we're not holding our board members accountable. So
absolutely. That's
that
cool.
On May 16th, people will come out and vote.
Yeah, absolutely. So, absolutely, definitely. So we have a question from one of our listeners. His name is Mo McGee, and he asked, how do you plan to improve and support the non-charter public schools that educate the majority of our students? So before you answer that question, I do want to kind of point out to my listeners, a lot of my listeners don't really understand what charter schools are. So maybe you can maybe kind of get it briefly into that, and then also to answer that question.
Yeah, so public schools are privately run, publicly funded schools that first started in our country 30 years ago. They're different all over the country. And so the question here is in large part on context. In LA, all of our charter schools are nonprofit. They're authorized by a school district or by the county. They're held to higher standards than other parts of the country. They're public, so we're not talking about vouchers, which I don't support for private schools.
Right.
But it's basically, whereas the state funds LA Unified, the state instead funds a nonprofit that is educating a group of students. And every few years that, in exchange for that flexibility, the school has to come back up for authorization, and the school district, the school board, has to say whether they're going to continue to let it operate if they're meeting the needs of kids.
Right.
So that's
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying there are more charter schools in LA than anywhere in the country by far. 130,000 kids in charters, 40,000 on wait lists. And to me, predominantly these kids in the charter schools in LA are of color, living in poverty. And to me, it's an indictment of a school district that's not meeting the needs of its families. And so to most question, one of the things that motivated me to run was to improve our non-charter schools so that so that all kids could get an education, so that parents don't feel the need to choose other options.
Right, and that's a big part of the argument, right, is the options. People who argue for public schools are saying it'll give people more options. And I don't know, maybe you can explain that a bit. And how do we improve non-charter schools? How do we why not just funnel the money to the public school system?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. And I think when we talk about choice in the public schools, or choice in general, and it's a heated concept now because of the very anti-public school policies of Donald Trump and Betsy DeVos, and kind of the corrosive influence they're having on our schools, that they will have if we don't stop them locally, which we will. But we've had choice in this country for generations. When a rich family chooses a private school, when a wealthy family buys a home in a nice neighborhood, that's a form of choice. And what charters have done is really let the benefits of that choice inure to poorer families. It used to be that only wealthy families in a place like LA could opt out of a neighborhood school if they thought it was not meeting their needs.
Yes.
And now poor families can. So the way I see this question, there were three motivations for starting charter schools. That choice piece, then this idea of healthy competition, where if school districts were forced to kind of improve or lose some students, that we would start to see them get better. And then third is to be the R&D for the district, to be these incubators of innovation, where we would learn at what's see what's working and bring it back. And so to the listener's question, that's what I want to do, is I want to look at why some of the charter schools in LA or districts, why are schools succeeding while others aren't, and how do we bring that to scale? Right. And it's not a secret in some of these schools. Great teachers, exciting curriculum, engaged parents, art and music and opportunities for more creativity in the classroom, less drill and kill. So there's a lot of incredible things happening in LA's public schools. And one of the things I want to do as a board member is just bring that learning to the rest of the schools.
What about the schools in LA County that are underfunded? A lot of our schools are funded through property taxes. And there are a lot of lower income neighborhoods in Los Angeles County that may not have the proper, funding for their schools, for things like after school programs and sports and things like that really help, students excel. So what are some of the plans to actually kind of uplift those schools? And how if the students do want to go to a charter school, how is that possible?
Yeah, so your first question, it's actually, California used to be the number one per pupil spending in the pure pupil spender in the country. And now, after years of, in the case of Ronald Reagan, Republican leadership, Prop 13, and some other corrosive measures, we're now like 44th out of 50. So we are an underfunded district, but most of our funding for public schools, actually the vast majority comes from the state and not property taxes. And there's a new funding formula statewide. It's called the local control funding formula. And what it was intended to do, passed by Governor Brown, is that we're going to give a base dollar amount to every child, and then we're going to give more money to kids who are in three distinct areas of need: living in poverty, living in foster care, and living and English language learners. And we're going to give those kids more money, to your point, to kind of supplement some of the difficulties that they've had in school. And unfortunately, LAUSD is not allocating money the way they're supposed to. And so the ACLU and a few other groups are suing the district because they're not allocating the money fairly. And so our lower income kids in LA Unified are getting shortchanged.
Right.
But in addition to fixing that funding area, I mean, I think we also have to advocate more collectively for more money in public education so that we're not fighting over scraps. To your second question, charter schools operate via lottery. So charter schools basically have what are like open attendance zones, and any kid can apply to any charter school. And if there's space, they can get in, and if not, there's usually a lottery. And so that's one of the reasons you start to see more charter schools proliferate, is because parents want these options that they don't feel that the district is giving them. And the charter school is full, and so they start another charter school and another. And, again, I want to improve district schools so we can mitigate some of that need for growth.
Right. And is there a push to improve our public schools?
Yes, but I think it's not been supported by the board as much as it should. So there are a lot of parents, obviously, are very hardworking teachers who are trying to do a lot, but they just haven't been supported at the district level. Whether that's through poor financial management, whether that's through less, not giving teachers the support and the development that they need. They've faced a lot of barriers, but I would definitely say that there's a desire, especially by the thousands of teachers every day who are doing such a good job in tough circumstances, to improve. And I just think they need more support.
Right. We're almost running out of time, but I have a couple more quick questions to ask you. Now, I did see there was this mailer that went out through the West Side I think it was your competitor Steve Zimmer. It's pretty negative. He was comparing you to Donald Trump and saying that you're kind of next to Betsy DeVos. That is not true, ladies and gentlemen. There's actually a pretty cool.
Thanks for the clarification.
I mean, I'm not. That's not true. Actually, a pretty interesting article on the Huffington Post about it. But how do you deal with all the negative campaigning, and how does that work? I mean, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think it was Bill Clinton who said when he was attacked, you don't know whether to laugh or to cry. Right. I laugh at it. I mean, I worked in President Obama's White House. We've been endorsed by Arne Duncan, who was President Obama's education secretary, Senator Barbara Boxer, a progressive icon. So, the Trump attacks are laughable. I mean, I do really think that we channel Michelle Obama's, when they go low, we go high, and we're really proud of running a positive campaign.
Right.
But I think we just got to, you got to counter lies with truth and with strength. And I think, that's why we're really proud of our volunteer base. It's that they're knocking on doors and correcting the record. And, let's talking about the challenges and the issues at stake, and not mudslinging the way we see in national polls.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I mean, especially with all the, a lot of my friends are getting what's called voter fatigue or political fatigue. You're like, damn, there's another election, and these negative ads have a tendency to really turn people off from the process. So that's pretty interesting. So kudos to you for that as well. We have about a minute left, but maybe if you can summarize this real quick. A lot of voters have been talking about for-profit charter schools not providing enough services for children with special needs. Is there an answer to this situation? And also, too, if you can piggyback in, how can parents get more involved with the process?
Yeah, so do you mean nonprofit charter schools? Or because in LA we have no for-profit charter schools.
Oh, you have no for-profit charter. Yeah, okay. There are no for-profit charter schools.
Yeah, so LA it's all nonprofit.
Right. Okay.
And one of the criticisms in most cases I think it's invalid. I mean, there's been a lot of studies about how charters are serving kids with special needs, but we need to hold all of our schools accountable for meeting the needs of every child. One of the things of a charter school, if you're a standalone charter school, you might not have the resources independently to serve every type of special need, and so they usually pool together with other charters and with other schools. But when you reset on a kids first approach, and we make sure we're meeting the needs of all kids, we've been coming together and we make sure that all kids can get served, and that's what we intend to do. With the parent piece, we need to engage our parents. We need to find more creative ways to engage them, especially our working parents. Some of that when I was teaching in Watts, there'd always be a police car out front, and that was a real deterrent to our parents to come and check out
Really?
the school. So little things
yeah.
like that. Yeah. Especially for our undocumented parents. So
Yeah, absolutely.
lots we can do.
Right. Okay. Very, very cool. Yeah. And, everybody remember, school is a community thing. So parents do get involved with your school board and all that other stuff. So, yeah. Mr. Nick Melvoin, I really, really want to thank you so much for coming on the Mike Riley Now podcast. Everybody, make sure you go out in LA County and vote next Tuesday on May 16th.
Next
Tuesday. Yes. You can holler at Nick. You can always Google him. But you can also tweet him at Nick, Melvoin. And make sure that if you have any questions you want to ask him, go ahead. Nick, is there anything you want to close out with?
No, the way we're going to hold elected officials accountable, whether that's the president or our members of Congress who voted so horrifically today to rob billions of health care, or our school board members, we need to come out and vote. So vote on May 16th, and let's start to change the narrative.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nick. I really appreciate it. And I want to thank every single last one of my listeners. Thank you all, everybody, for joining me today. We will be back next week. I want to definitely send a big shout out to Brooke Doherty. God bless Charlie. God bless Cam. God bless Nick. God bless every single last one of you. Please remember to get involved. Vote on May 16th. And also remember that democracy, I'm quoting from a great scholar, is not a spectator sport. You have to get involved in the process. We are all in this together. All right, y'all. We will see you next week here on the Mike Riley Now podcast. God bless you and cheers.
You are listening to the Mike Riley Now podcast on the Young Angels of America Network. Follow us by visiting MikeRileyNow.com.